Hi there. Okay, so this is our story. Just briefly, I will really try and keep it brief. This is our story just so you can understand where I'm coming from, what experience I've got, and then we'll go into the proper episodes for each topic. So Mum, who is currently 77, born in 1943, she was very organised as a person. She came from Horsforth in Yorkshire, met my dad and married my dad, and was a teacher in Ripon for lots and lots of years. She retired early, but that wasn't anything to do with Alzheimer's or anything. She's her husband, my dad, was Roger Alder. We unfortunately lost him in 2016, which was pretty much the beginning of when we realised there was a problem with Mum. Mum's got two daughters, myself, Liz, and my sister Joanne, and she's also got 5 grandchildren, 4 boys and a girl. She was very family orientated, absolutely loved her grandchildren, was always the sort of organised person who remembered birthdays and baked cakes and did all the finances for the house, brought 2 girls up whilst working full-time pretty much most of her career. Okay, so we first started seeing signs around 7 years ago, in about 2013. We're now in 2020. First of all, it was just forgetfulness, repeating things to us multiple times. But yeah, we all do that now and again, so we weren't too worried at the beginning. Then Dad got ill, and we do feel that that was the beginning of Mum's proper illness with Alzheimer's. So Dad got cancer. Mum didn't cope very well at all. Dad knew she wouldn't, so even didn't want to tell her that he had cancer in the first place. Basically, Mum didn't cope very well with going to appointments, dealing with doctors, nurses and medication. So my sister and I really had to step in and take over with that and make sure Dad was looked after. We definitely realised something was wrong during the period of my dad's illness because, a lot of the stuff that Mum was doing was out of character. She lost empathy. That was one of the things. Dad unfortunately passed away in 2016, and at that point, obviously, we didn't know what was grief and what wasn't grief regarding Mum's behaviour. So although we did notice a deterioration, we weren't sure whether that was partly grief. So we decided to leave it. But yeah, she deteriorated. She started getting numbers and dates wrong and couldn't cope with her bank and paying bills and things like that. She started on with a few obsessions. However, we decided to just leave it for a little while as we were all grieving, not just Mum. So we left it a while, and then eventually we decided, it was probably about a year later, we did decide she's going downhill, we have to do something about it. By this point, I'd done a bit of research and we'd found that actually if it was Alzheimer's, there was some medication that could be taken. So we decided, come on, let's pursue this, because if there is some medication, we need to get her on it if it does end up being Alzheimer's. So we pursued the diagnosis, which I hate to say it took about a year to actually get diagnosed, and that was partly because Mum just wouldn't go to the doctors. We really had a job persuading her that there was something wrong and she had to get checked out. However, we got the diagnosis and it was Alzheimer's, as we thought it would be. She was given a medication called donepezil, which is a common medication for Alzheimer's, and that was gradually ramped up and increased over a number of weeks. We did think it helped at the beginning. We did think it actually slowed things down, which it's meant to do. And then we moved on to a period of being fairly settled, actually, for a while. When I say a while, possibly a year. Although there was deterioration, we were coping with it and we were ready for it. We did let things settle. Mum was very much pretending that things were okay. We think she knew something was wrong with her, but she would just carry on with this pretense that she was absolutely fine. And we just learned to not mention it. We learned to just go along with it, because if we did mention anything or treat her in a certain way, she would get a bit defensive and a bit angry, which again, very much out of her character. We found that routine was very, very important to her, and again, that's a very common trait of Alzheimer's and dementia generally. So we tried wherever we could to try and keep her routine going and not disrupt it. We eventually took over her medication and her bank account and got power of attorney sorted out, which was very, very important, and we're so glad we did it. We actually got the power of attorney done before her diagnosis. I will do a whole nother episode about that, because it's really important to get that power of attorney in place before any diagnosis, because otherwise it just becomes a lot more difficult. So we took Mum on a couple of holidays because we wanted to make sure that she had a nice time, and we also wanted to give her a couple of holidays while we still could, because we knew that she was probably going to deteriorate and it might become harder. So we took her to Amsterdam, which was a lovely little trip. My sister and I took her. It was very revealing, because spending time with her 24/7, we realised just how bad she was. I'll talk about that later in other episodes again. But it was great, and then the following year I took her up to Pitlochry in Scotland, and again another nice trip, but again very telling. I did notice some further things that we hadn't noticed before. And then after that we didn't take her away, but we took her out for, day trips and things like that, and we did a couple of overnights in Filey, because Mum loves Filey, little beach resort, and there was a guest house there that was very, very helpful to us. So moving forward, Mum just got gradually worse. Buses and journeys and different things like that became hard. Her hair appointments, she would turn up, get the wrong time, she wouldn't turn up at all, or she'd turn up with no money. And so basically my sister and I just started going around hairdressers, shops, places like that knew Mum, and we just made them aware of what the situation was so that they could help or be more patient with her. We also gave our phone numbers out to quite a few shops as well, and the hairdressers. She did start with some obsessions. She had an obsession with a couple of bus drivers, for instance, and it was you've got to laugh about some of these things, otherwise you would cry too much, but it was quite amusing sometimes, but it was nothing awful, it was just funny. She would also get to the point where she was losing her purse, she would lose her handbag, she would forget to take them, she would lose keys. She would go out and not lock the door. So the security side of things became an issue. She was also not eating properly. She just wasn't bothering to feed herself properly. She was maybe just eating literally biscuits and cookies, and she had a very sweet tooth at that point. Also, she was going out walking, a lot of walking, which she's always done, but she would just go out wandering around the streets, and she wouldn't care that it was night time, so she would go out walking in the dark. Even when we expressed concern that we didn't want her to do that, she would just brush it off and just say, it's fine, I'm absolutely fine. We then started using a lot of technology to try and help us to make sure she was safe. So we, mobile phones, house phone, we got the dementia versions of those. There was a particular dementia clock. We got her a tracker, so we put that in a handbag. We got the door lock changed, so it would be a self-locking thing when she went out, because she was going out and just not locking the door. We had a key safe. We eventually got a door sensor and a CCTV camera in her kitchen when things got really quite bad. Okay, she then got to the point where she would struggle when she was in company with larger gatherings. So if she was just one-to-one, she would be sort of okay, but she would struggle if there was 2 or 3 of you or more, because she couldn't follow the conversations, and she just became a little bit detached from people when there was a group of people there. We tried to introduce carers, and we had to do this by pretending, because she wouldn't accept any help. We had to pretend that this carer was a cleaner. So this carer came and pretended that she was a cleaner and came for 2 or 3 weeks, but then in the end mum just wouldn't have her coming in the house anymore. She just didn't want her to be there, and she was actually quite rude about her. So we stopped that, we left it a while, and then eventually we just had to pursue it again. We then introduced social services. We got a bit of help, and it was really good being able to discuss things with a couple of social workers. We ended up getting some official carers involved at this point because the social workers did advise that. That wasn't great at first, but eventually it did get accepted by mum. And then it just deteriorated from there, really. After some conversations with this really great social worker that we had, she eventually advised us that we needed to start looking at care homes. My sister and I just didn't really feel ready for that, but we did start looking anyway. And then actually it was a really good job we did, because we quite quickly mum deteriorated to the point where we had to actually seriously consider putting her in one, which was an awful decision. Another episode again. Anyway, eventually we did get her into his lovely care home in Ripon called Borridge House. We knew of it. It's only not far from where mum lived anyway, in Ripon. And the bottom line is, you know, she's there now. She's been in there for about 8 months now. They are lovely people. They care. They do everything they can to help mum, and it's like a family there. They're very caring to us as well. They make sure we're okay, and they communicate really well with us. So it's not all bad. I will come on to a lot of those subjects in more detail in some of the further episodes, but for now I'll say bye-bye. I'd be grateful if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. That way you'll get notifications of new episodes. Thanks for watching our story. The next one will be initial signs of cognitive decline, so please join us there.